Hello.
Hello. Good morning.
Hi.
It's a privilege to have you on our stream this morning. How are you doing?
Oh, awesome.
Great.
Is this video or is this voice only, or is there do I need to turn on a camera or something?
This is voice only. I don't think I'm set up to pull you on stream. You can, you can just relax. You're good. Uh,
Awesome.
so the first thing that I want to ask about to set up here in BFA, essences in particular really incentivized players to do content categories that were kind of outside of their desired areas. You know, for example, having essences from PvP or Rating or Mythic Plus. How does the team feel about the way that played out, and are those types of cross content requirements going to continue?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that we feel like we like to be able to expose our players to the wide variety of things that there are to do in WoW. uh, Putting hard restrictions and especially forcing people to do things that they really honestly don't want to do, we've kind of decided, yeah, that's probably not a good idea. And so I think it's more we're tending towards giving those things as an option. So like for our emissaries now, the callings will have a greater variety of activities, and some of those will include doing a dungeon, but it's not a requirement. You don't have to do that. You'll have other options that you can chase to progress your character or just to discover more about your covenant.
Okay. How about the conduit sources? I've heard that conduits are going to come from many different types of gear, and it looks like those are consumed on use if you decide to switch them out. Are those going to be coming, like, can you get any given content from a wide variety of sources, or are they going to be tied to specific content sources the same way essences were?
I don't know that we finalized that. I think we would, again, our philosophy would be that we're not going to force you to get the one thing you really want by doing something that you wouldn't normally do. So, if there's a conduit that is particularly attractive for PvP use, it will probably be something that you see as a drop in a PvP activity. Um, Conversely, if it's something that is beneficial for dungeon or raiding, that's probably where you'll find it drop. And a lot of things are going to come from activities in given zones, downing world bosses, completing quests in an area, which we assume that part is okay for everybody,
Yeah.
because it doesn't require very specific coordination between player groups.
Cool. Thanks. Something else I'm really curious. Coming up in Shadowlands, we've heard bits and pieces about this expanded weekly cache that provides options for you to choose from based on what you've done for the week. What types of content are going to feed into that?
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly we want to make sure right off the bat, gear, but we also want to make sure that our PvP players feel like, hey, they can be doing things that they like doing in PvP and still have access to a weekly chest and gear that's going to be beneficial to them. But beyond that, we'd like to include the plethora of goodies that we have in WoW, so that there will likely be toys and there may be appearance changes. There might be pets or mounts in there. Again,
Okay.
I don't think we finalized all of that. But we do want to have a variety of things that you can get, and that's likely to evolve through the course of the expansion as well.
Okay. So I've heard that with that system, though, the idea is that the more you do, the more choices you have, but that you will, at the end of the week, pick one piece of loot. Um, are the mounts and pets and PvP stuff included in that? Are you going to be choosing between those different things, or are those extras kind of on top of the weekly allotment of loot?
Yeah, I think that's TBD.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, just a little more about PvP. I think a lot of people are really excited to see PvP vendors coming back to simplify gearing. However, we're
Yeah.
also seeing several new power progression systems such as soulbinds and legendary crafting. So my question is, how much non-PvP content should your average PvPer expect to do in order to be ready for the arena?
I mean, everyone is going to be creating a soulbind. They're going to find they're going to create a soulbound character. There will be some questing involved with establishing that relationship with your soulbind. Ideally, some of the activities are going to be PvP oriented. Now, in terms of crafting legendary, you will be running Torghast to do that. And while that's not a directly PvP activity, there is a certain degree of intensity and excitement in playing that, and the content itself is designed to be very repeatable because there's a high degree of randomness and power ups that happen. Um, so those are probably the two biggest activities that would be quote unquote, not directly PvP.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Um, to pivot a little bit to economy, BFA, we saw our biggest gold sink yet with that 5 million gold Brutosaur mount. Do we have any news on what's on the horizon for gold sinks in Shadowlands, or at least the philosophy towards them?
Yeah, I mean, we want to make sure that we have some gold sinks. Some of our players are pretty adept at accumulating mass wealth, so we want them to be able to show that off. Brutosaur may be a little bit over the top in terms of the cost of that, so I wouldn't be surprised if the things that we offer in the future are going to be priced a little bit lower than that.
Sure. Yeah.
And there's also specific utility with that I think some of our players, I wish I had that and I wish I could obtain it. So
Okay.
we're rethinking how far we took that.
For sure. Kind of related to the amount of gold we're going to be making going forward, recently we've seen some auction house changes to throttle that kind of large scale cancel and resetting behavior on the current auction house. With this new stance that we're taking on add on driven automation, are there any other categories that can expect a similar kind of limiting?
I mean, not specifically in add-ons, and there are things that we have done, and this is more related to WoW Classic, but has implications, or could have implications in Shadowlands as well. That we've noticed an uptick in bot activity.
Sure.
In Classic, we didn't have, gold is harder to obtain and it takes longer, and we didn't have really as many gold sinks in the game, and there's also not the same way in which we get resources. So when there's a fleet of bots running around and they're harvesting resources, it really is taking away from the players in the game. And so what we've done is we've identified areas that are particularly lucrative if you're running 24/7, and we've limited the number of times you can run them. So there's an instance cap in WoW Classic right now, and specifically that is to curb the automation that's happening there. We've seen pretty good success with that. It definitely has slowed down the gold farmers.
Okay. Speaking of gold and professions, in Shadowlands, we've noticed that there's a lot of really cool new things with crafting in these optional regions, and also the star ranks of your professions have been de-emphasized. Is there an overarching goal or philosophy behind these profession changes? Where are you trying to get to with professions in Shadowlands?
Well, we want to make all the professions meaningful, so you don't feel like, you know, this profession is the wrong one for me because it doesn't give me either the gear that I wanted, or, nobody wants to buy the stuff I have. So we want to, they need to stay consistent with their flavor, but we want to have all of them be useful in some way, shape, or form, not only to the player, but also in the economy.
Right, yeah. We're getting some really cool stuff in terms of what kind of armor that we can craft. I think that all of those optional regions are allowing you to really specialize crafted gear in Shadowlands. And the concern I have with that is usually crafted gear is something that's kind of cool in the first patch, and then maybe we update it a little bit here and there, but it doesn't really have a place in the game going forward. Is there any plans to make armor crafted gear, like the beginning stuff that you're making as you're leveling up, continue to be relevant throughout Shadowlands?
Like what we did with BFA is we would level up the crafted gear with each update that we did. So for many of most of the players, the crafted item that you could create was equivalent, if not better, than the things you might obtain otherwise. We always want to have crafted items to be meaningful. It probably won't be the case that a crafted item would be better than the best thing you could get in mythic rating, for instance, or from a very high level keystone dungeon, because we do want the people that go through the trouble of conquering a mythic raid to still be able to brag that, yeah, I have some of the best gear in the game. Now, it's okay if a piece is up there and somewhat equivalent to that, And we do want to make sure that crafted items, again, for the majority of players, will represent some of the better pieces of gear you could get.
So would you say that you're aiming to balance that item level somewhere around like World Quest rewards, kind of pre-LFR stuff? Is that the idea?
I don't know. I don't know where the rewards team is going to
Sure.
set the bar, but we do want it to be meaningful. We don't want you to feel like, gosh, by the time I got my crafting level up to maximum, the gear I'm getting through regular play is better than what I can craft.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there's a lot of effort that goes into that as well.
There's also a really interesting set of items called these relics, I think relics of the past, that allow you to scale a crafted item down to match a previous expansion. Where does that fit into the Shadowlands leveling experience, especially alongside heirlooms, which we now know will still scale, but no experience bonuses on those, I heard? What's
Yeah,
the idea there?
I'm sorry. That one I'm not going to be able to answer for you just through lack of deep familiarity. So
No worries. All good.
that's a best question for our rewards team.
Cool, cool. I have one about the character limit, actually. We currently have a character limit of 50 characters per account, and we've been able to put those all in one server if we want now. What's the goal and philosophy behind that limit, and can we expect to see any increases?
I mean, that size actually has been fairly consistent. It's just that we had a cap on individual realms. And honestly, the limit is just the size of the database we have to carry. We look at how many accounts have, more than a handful of characters, how many actually have maximum number of characters. And there's a backside overhead that we carry in order just to have those characters. And so that's one part of it is just literally database size. The other part of it is we don't want people going out and just kind of name reserving on a bunch of realms. And we have seen that behavior where, they'll run out anytime we increase the character cap. We saw a lot of folks run out and just reserve a bunch of names on the realm they're on and then be sitting there, camping a bunch of, low level characters. Because, there are millions of people playing WoW now, and there's some really cool names that people want to have, and yet they can't because, there's a low level tune camping it.
Sure, yeah. With up to 50 characters per account, I think that list has gotten fairly sizable for some people, and I think you could now say the same thing about the slightly unrelated, the hunter pet stable size. We're going to have 200 pets in the stable. Are there any plans for better organization or sorting or filtering or anything like that for those increasingly large lists that we're managing?
Well, my main that I've played since 2014 is a hunter, and so I was super excited to see that we were going to get a bigger stable. I don't know that at least when we release 9.0, you're going to see a significantly better UI for managing that.
Sure.
But it is something that we're mindful of, and I'm hopeful, as you are, I guess, that it'll make it a little bit easier. We have added search capabilities, which I think, I'm also an achievement farmer. So I like being able to type in what I have a vague notion the name of the achievement was and being able to go right to it and see if I've actually got it or not. So yeah, hopefully something like that for pets.
Cool, cool. Speaking of just achievement and collectible hunting, as we're looking forward to Shadowlands, many people are considering how we're going to continue farming BFA content for collectibles. Specifically, is there any chance of allowing players to enter island expeditions solo?
We have no plans for that. I think that's an interesting suggestion, but currently it's still, islands were designed as a group activity, and we'd like to encourage people to do that. Obviously, it's at this point, if you're a very proficient player, it's going to be a little bit easier for you. And the cool thing is, with Party Sync, you'll find people at lower level that you'll be able to group up with and play with. Most of all the people that will be new to the game that have gone into our new player experience will emerge from that experience, Exile's Reach, as a level 10 player going into BFA for the first time. And we anticipate a pretty big group of people. So I don't think people are going to have a problem finding a group to do islands. If that becomes a problem down the road, and not able to find enough people to do it, then we'll certainly revisit that.
Sure. Yeah, I had to try. Slightly related, a few people want to know, is there any time pressure on finishing goals and achievements in Horrific Visions? They've been compared to Mage Towers a lot, and we're wondering if there's any cutoff there people should be worrying about.
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
A couple of pet battle questions. There has been some really intriguing stuff on Alpha that I'm wondering if you know anything about pet battle PvP power. Is there anything more we can hear there?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, good. Similarly, we've seen an end to the Pet Battle Dungeon storyline now with that 8.3 Stratholme Pet Dungeon. What kind of direction is the Pet Battle endgame headed in Shadowlands? Are we seeing more dungeons, or are we pivoting to something else?
I think the dungeons are a lot of fun. I'm also a pet collector. There's a group of players that really are into it, but it hasn't had as much broad appeal as some of the other features of the game. And so I think we're kind of taking a pass just to see what's the reception like. If we get a lot of demand for more pet battle dungeons, that's something we'll look at later in the expansion.
Sure.
But nothing new for the release of Shadowlands.
Okay. Flying is something that I think a few of us are worrying about the pacing of in Shadowlands. Is it correct that we're going to be getting another Pathfinder achievement for the new expansion? And if so, how are we feeling about the pacing of when the second part comes out? Are we intending another year on the ground?
Okay, so answer to your first question, yes.
Yeah.
So there will be a Pathfinder. Now, you won't be able to fly when Shadowlands is released. We think it's super important that you experience the world as intended, that you meet everything on it, and that you go through the quests and really take it all in from the ground. But then we realized that as you get further along in the expansion, you've revisited zones that you like the convenience of being able to fly to areas. And so we did hear feedback from players about how pathfinding worked in BFA, and kind of the complaints about the rep grind they felt they had to do to achieve it. So what we're going to do with unlocking flying in Shadowlands is that this will be based off of renown. So as you develop your reputation with your covenant, that will effectively not your reputation, I'm sorry, your renown with your covenant, that will effectively unlock flying. So through the natural course of selecting a covenant, developing your sanctum, which all players will be doing, that effectively will do the unlock.
Nice. Is that step of it expected to be available in the first patch, or is that a later down the road thing?
That's a TBD. We're going to have, through the course of Shadowlands, we're going to have some small patches, and then we're going to have some much bigger ones, kind of in the way that we did with BFA. So that may be one of the ones that goes into one of the larger patches. So the first patch will undoubtedly be something where we're going to take care of any issues that we saw in the release of Shadowlands. Were there tuning things that we needed to do? Were there things that despite our best efforts, just didn't get the reception we'd hoped? So we always kind of reserve that first patch to get everything dialed in. So I would expect it will not be in the very first patch that we have.
Okay. We have a lot of interest here in potential future new allied races. I think that's a feature that has a lot of people really excited. What I think that it's interesting that the difference between an allied race and just a standard new race has become kind of slowly blurred over time. What I really want to know here is, what does the team look for when considering a new allied race in terms of which ones you're looking to add, when you're looking to add them, and if there's like a point where you say, well, that's enough, there's too many choices now, we're done.
Yeah, I mean, allied races, it fit the fiction for BFA, right? It's Horde versus Alliance. We're trying to get these different races to come on board and become part of our faction. So that was integrated into the storyline. Not sure how well that fits in the fiction of Shadowlands. I mean, you are pledging a covenant, and regardless of your faction, um, you're joining that covenant. So I think that remains to be seen how that'll play out.
Sure, sure. And I'm almost to the end of my list here. I've got a couple of rapid fire specific ones where no shame if you don't have the answer handy. I noticed on character creation lately, the hunter pets for various races are actually new creature types, but there's no in-game changes just yet. Is that just kind of for inspiration like class poses, or are those pets actually being upgraded?
Are you talking about give me an example?
Like the racial hunter pets. So right now on live service, a new Pandaren hunter gets a turtle, but on the character creation screen for Shadowlands, they actually have a yak.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would consider right now what we have in alpha, and even in the early stages of beta, is going to be don't consider that to be final.
Sure.
Sadly enough, hunter pets are something that we don't actually turn on everything until kind of midpoint in beta, because we want to make sure that in general the control and the behavior is good, and pets aren't running off and doing something you don't want them to do. But then we don't get into the kind of the flavor until a little bit later.
Of course. Okay. Cool. And then with the level squish, do you have any word on whether heritage armor level requirements are going to be squished down along with them? Can we expect, like on a new allied race, are we going to be unlocking that set at 50? Is it later on at 60?
I mean, certainly the number by which, or the level by which the heritage armor becomes active and stays active is going to get squished. So what are specifically you're asking is when you can access it, or how far it will take?
When in a character's journey do you have that unlocked? I would imagine level 50, but just wanted to double check.
I believe that's the case.
Okay. Similarly, in terms of leveling a new character, let's see if I still have this one handy. No, I think that might have actually been it. I think that might have actually been all I had, and we're just about out of time here. I would like to thank you so much for joining me on the stream.
Oh, thanks for inviting me, and thanks for supporting WoW and Shadowlands.
Oh, thanks so much, John. I hope you have a great day.
All right, bye now.
Oh, that last one was awkward. I had a thought and I couldn't grab the rest of it, and it was never going to happen, so I just bailed. There we go. We did it. It's over. Thanks, guys.